Good evening. It's 7 o'clock, and we have 2 meetings and a public hearing. The Cunningham Town Board will meet. We'll have a hearing on the city budget, and then that will be followed by the meeting of the Urbana City Council. So I'd like to call the meeting of the Cunningham Township Board to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Ammons?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Jacobson?
Here.
Mr. Madigan? Ms. Marlin? Here. Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Mr. Smythe?
Here.
Mayor Pressing.
Here. This is a special meeting of the Town Board Budget Committee. Is there anyone who wants to address the Cunningham Town Board? I don't think I have any cards from anyone. We'll move on then to new business, discussion of the Town Board budget update. Michelle Mayall.
Charlie called the meeting, so
Okay.
I'm not really sure.
Charlie, did you want to talk first then?
Yeah, I'll get us started. I hope you've got the township tentative budget that Michelle passed out about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, something like that, yeah. And so I'm going to be working from that. So one of the first things I probably should ask is you have to, I've numbered my pages so that I can quickly turn to different ones. So page 4, it's at the top of the page says ordinance number T dash whatever. And I'm finally starting to understand how the numbers all work. There are 4 paragraphs here that there is an estimate of the beginning balance July 1, 2015, Town Fund, General Assistance Fund, total of all funds. And the Town Fund is $898,000 plus General Assistance 1.344. So the first question I have for Michelle is, do you have any updates on this, or are these numbers pretty close?
That sheet
Oh.
that I emailed you is
Okay.
current from the day after our meeting,
Oh, okay. So
but that was not sent to everybody. That
Oh.
was you.
could you read those numbers to us then? Because I think that'd be,
What day was that we met? Do you remember?
which of the 2 times, with Bill or without Bill?
With Bill and Mike. 2 weeks?
About 2 weeks ago. Mike might remember. Oh, Mike has it.
It has the current balance in the town fund on the most updated one that I have done, which was approximately 2 weeks ago, at $623,241 in town fund.
826, you're saying?
623,
23, okay.
241.
Okay. And then the GA?
1,268,958.
Okay, so those numbers are a little smaller than what you had
Correct.
projected. Is the money still coming in, or?
We will probably get one more lump from property tax. Just depends on when everybody pays. It was a lot lower in May than we've received in previous years. It just depends on the timing of when
Okay.
people pay their
So
taxes.
we have one more bit of
large
money.
one,
One
yes.
more large one coming into this. So these numbers could go back up to what you're thinking they
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so and then what finally clicked earlier today was that in the second paragraph here, the town fund general assistance, the estimate of cash to be received during the fiscal year, which town fund general assistance is $760,710, and the general assistance $557,765. Those are the numbers primarily driven by the levy that we passed last December.
November. Correct.
Or November, December, whenever,
Yes.
yeah, the final. Okay, so so we run on numbers that we project basically for the year ahead, and then so
Right.
we're you know the budget is really off by what, 18 months essentially.
enough to make us all crazy.
Yeah, okay, that's a good way to put it. Okay, so, anyway, so we set this levy last November, December for what we're going to be spending essentially in the next fiscal year. So keeping that in mind, I think that helps guide some of the decisions we might make on how much money and how to balance the levy going forward. And so there are two things that I know that we had talked about moving a majority of social services to the town fund. But because the levy is passed basically for the following year, and we did it last December, we really haven't put that in the budget for the coming year. I think that's where.
Right.
Okay, so.
And the general assistance amount that is in the tentative budget under that ordinance and what we're actually going to receive is about $15,000 less too. So the estimated amount that is in your tentative budget that you were just referring to,
Right.
that GA amount is about $15,000 less.
Okay. And then to catch everything up, at what point will we do an amended budget for the fiscal year that's closing up, that will close up June 30th?
Catch everything up, meaning?
Will we do I know a lot of times we've done some budget amendments for the final quarter of the township budget to make things match up a little better. Or,
The line item transfers?
Right, yeah.
Those are done. Those will be done at the July meeting.
At the July
Those
meeting.
are like the ones we overrun in like dues and subs or training. You know, we do different things during the year, but nothing major.
Okay, and then, okay, so, getting back to my point I was wondering if we could tap the town fund. We can't do the GA fund. Tap the town fund for additional funds for social services, and then free up that money in the city's budget for use for police or other high priority needs. And in looking at that, we essentially, when you count all the surplus, we essentially have about a $300,000 surplus in the town fund and over $1 million in the GA fund. Now, the GA fund has been accumulating about $200,000 a year thanks to the ACA. So we've saved 2.5 years so far.
Correct. There was, I believe, $179,000 budgeted the last 2 years for that.
Okay, so we've saved 400,000. We'll save at least half of that amount again in the coming year, because if the new program begins again, it'll be, if we have to start paying again, it'll begin in January. So we'll save 6 more months. So we will have, we've got our two budget balances are substantially out of kilter. So a question for Fred on this is, we have in the budget, we have allocated certain monies for Carl and Presence if we have to pay them back. And they are equally balanced between GA and the town fund. In the event that we had to pay them back, however unlikely that might be, are we obligated to take it equally from both funds, or can we tap one side or the other?
You have limitations, as you know, on the GA fund. Assuming you had to pay back all that is there, I don't think you'd have any choice but to pay the whole amount back. But there's nothing I know of that says you have to use those particular dollars, because I'm not aware of anything that says you have to hold the money. I mean, that was a matter of fiscal management and deciding how to deal with the possibility. You could have not dealt with the possibility and waited to see what happened, and then dealt with something on more of an emergency basis. So I'm not aware of anything that would say that you have to do it equally, but the only other thing you can do with the funds, the GA funds, then will be GA expenditures. You can transfer from the general fund into the GA fund, but you can't do it the other way around. You can't transfer from the GA fund to the general fund.
But we could say, okay, we have a bigger surplus in the GA fund. We pay 500,000 out of that and 100,000 out of the town fund, if we had to pay back that money.
Well, what would make sense to me, and understand this isn't based upon any research, hopefully we'll never need to do any such research, but I think it certainly could be argued that the only money you could pay out of the GA fund would be money that came into the GA fund. If you're paying money out of the GA fund to repay taxes, and I think it probably should be the funds that went into it for that purpose.
So that would mean having to go back and recalculate all those years to figure that out.
To determine how much it is,
To, yeah, the proportions out of each side.
well, I would think that the financial records should show for each year what went into it. I guess I'm speaking for someone else to do the work, but it doesn't seem to me like that would be a major undertaking to figure out those numbers. Because
Okay.
you know what the amounts were that were received in each year.
Right. Okay, well, I think that the bottom line is that ultimately we have a very out of balance GA town fund surplus. And for next year, the next levy that we do, I think it's absolutely imperative that we rebalance that. And the issue is whether we want to tap some of the expected budget surplus in the town fund of 300,000 for additional social service funding or not. Whether you feel comfortable doing that, even though we won't be able to adjust the levy until next year.
Diane?
Where are you getting a $300,000 surplus?
If you-
I'm seeing 200.
Yeah, it's about 260.9 plus or minus. You know, it's the fourth paragraph. I should have said, yeah, so the fourth paragraph in that is the ending balance at the end is 560.9, 1.59 million, and total of all funds. And if you subtract out the Carl money, yeah, it's 260 as opposed to 300. If you want to be exact about it. The only way we can get exact numbers is to go back and actually figure out what the proportions are that have to be paid back to really know exactly what that balance would be. Further, you could, of course, say you could say I'm going to take 500,000 from one side and 100,000 for the other to pay back we take from the bigger surplus to pay back any court settlement if that's where it comes from. If it has to come from. I'm not sure. That's the one little piece here that needs to be investigated. But you have at least a $260,000 surplus, maybe a little more. There's usually some savings across the year.
And actually, that's going to be less because after I had a conversation with Laurel, in the tentative budget that you have, there's $100,000 under social service with $50,000 of that going to the homelessness prevention program. And Laurel asked if I would put another $50,000 in social service agency funding, so there would be $100,000 in social service agency funding, and then $50,000 still with the homelessness prevention program.
So that would leave us with 210.
I'd like to offer another comment on that, on the social services. Keep in mind, I'm not suggesting policy. That's for the supervisor and the board, just pointing out what you can and can't do and what you need to be careful about. If you're proposing to use township funds from the township's general fund to fund social services that the city otherwise would be funding. You need to keep in mind that you should only be using those funds for things that township funds could be used for. And while that can't always be determined precisely, remember this all arose under federal revenue sharing from the 70s and early 80s. Federal revenue sharing went away, but the authority for local government stayed in effect. It's social service funding for the poor and aged. There are things you might do that would be social service funding, but you can only spend these funds where it is social service funding programs for poor people and for elderly people.
Eric?
I think that's not true based on my reading of the state statutes. The state statutes say that township may do youth services, elder services, a number of things like that. And then there's a catch-all phrase that basically, I think anything that we're doing, my reading of the statute, I'm not an attorney, but I have read the statute. My reading of the statute is that all of the things that we do with social service funding are absolutely permitted, are absolutely appropriate for township funding.
Well, if you want to point out to me, perhaps by an email, what sections you're looking at, I'll certainly take a look at them. What I reviewed today, I don't recall seeing that language. And keep in mind that I don't know if this is the answer to your question, but there are some things that can be authorized at the annual meeting of the electors, which is different than what can be authorized by the township board. So I would want to look at exactly what sections you're looking at. So if you'd send me an email with that, I'll read it tomorrow.
I'll circulate that to everybody, that section of the state statutes.
Michelle, you want to do the budget for the township in July, right?
The approval for the final?
Right.
Correct.
Wh-
At our July meeting,
Which date are you thinking of?
the first Monday of the month.
Okay, because that's one of the days that we're thinking of not having. There are a few people that are going to be gone, so would it be okay to move it to a different date?
Sure.
Or- Okay. I think when we talked, you said you thought the town could fund all kinds of social services, and that would stay in your budget, so you would obviously have a conversation about which ones you want to cover.
You mean when we talked about adding the 50,000?
Yeah, when we talk about the 100,000,
Correct.
it would just be right in your budget. And that's
Right.
how we've done it before, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Charlie?
Yeah, two things here. I think even under the poor and aged definition for funding, almost a vast majority of our programs are aimed at the poor and aged. Senior services, food pantries, programs that have a census tract or a federal income poverty level definition. And
The
so-
information that we've seen doesn't indicate what the programs are. At least I haven't seen that.
Right, and so I think that where I'm going with this is that I think even if we put a little more than 100,000 in, we can identify programs that meet the very strictest definition that Fred likes of poor and aged, and leave the remaining, since I'm not saying we fund all social services from here, from the township, I'm saying if we can manage another 50,000 or another 75,000, I have uses for that money in the city budget. I think we all have uses for that money. You know which one I want to do it with. You know which one I want to use it for. So that's what I'm after, and I think we could easily identify we could easily match our current social service funding that meet the poor and aged criteria. And so the question is whether or not we are comfortable with dropping below 200,000 in the surplus of the town fund. So another question for Michelle, and I'm trying to go after this very objectively. One of the things I noticed in the budget, you sent me in February, sent to me and Bill, a spreadsheet that was called FY 2015 Revenues and Expenditures Updated Fiscal Year 14 year-to-date totals. And so it's an Excel spreadsheet. And what I don't understand is why we don't have more columns and why our budget isn't in this general format to begin with. You've got one spreadsheet here that has a lot of the information I think would be really useful for us to work with. But it shows the 1.3 million total budget, or total surplus as one of the numbers here at the very end of that. But what I noticed in looking through that was that we have line items for spending on vehicles, vehicle replacement, building maintenance, big ticket building maintenance items, but there's no carryover of that. Is that right? You just, if it doesn't get spent, it just becomes part of the surplus? Yeah. So that's the other thing is that if we have a big ticket item to pay for in the coming year, unexpected big ticket item, it would come out of that surplus. So, like I said, I'm trying to understand these numbers very, very carefully here. So one thing I might want to suggest is that we look at actually flagging some of those long-term things in a VERF and or building fund so that we know that we're building capacity in those areas going forward.
Okay, anyone else? Dennis?
Yes, and so I guess that as Charlie was talking, I was thinking the same thing, that what is the physical plant, the township building, what's the status of it? And I know recently there was flooring and carpeting done in the building. There had been flooding in the basement a couple years ago. Are we in pretty good shape? Do we expect expenditures? How's our roof? Do you have anything that you think is going to be a large ticket item coming up just with the physical building itself?
The flood happened because the sump pump had never been replaced since the building was originally built. So that went out and we replaced it with a sump pump and a backup. So that should not happen again. We replaced the carpet because that had not been done since 1999, and we have a lot of traffic in and out of there. So that needed done. It was more maintenance type stuff. The roof, I believe, is 10 years old. So, hopefully it has a few more years on it, I'm sure. Other than that, no, we got a new furnace with the flood. And we have it serviced every, winter and summer. So they don't foresee any problems with that as far as big ticket. But, we don't really have, copiers and, that kind of stuff. But there's just one that both sides use. That's copy, fax, and scan and everything. So the only thing I could foresee within the next 10 years would be a roof. And that's it.
Charlie, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I want to go ahead and make a motion and see how things, this would be a staff level motion. I would move to direct the township supervisor to prepare a budget that would add an additional $75,000 to social services, which would theoretically take the budget post settlement to $145,000 in the town fund.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, but I'm going to ask for an explanation. I'll second it. Now let me ask for a clarification. I don't know where the 145,000 came. I would have thought that you would be now asking the township to spend a total of 175,000.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
I'm just looking at what it does to the surplus.
Mm-hmm.
It would reduce the surplus to a theoretical 145, is what I'm saying.
Aaron?
I'll defer to Mr. Madigan. No, okay, all right. So I'm just trying to make sure I have a complete understanding. Some of the questions that were raised were in relationship to a possible payback to Carl. What would that amount possibly be? 600? I'm trying to make sure I get
And
it.
half of that comes out of the general assistance fund. A quarter of it comes out of town fund supervisor's budget, and a quarter comes out of town fund assessor's budget.
So that's why you were asking about that.
My numbers are post, I removed that from my numbers.
Okay.
Surplus.
So at this point, the motion is to spend, for Michelle to spend $175,000 on social services. And 50 for the rent assistance. Right. So, and that all comes out of the town fund. Okay. So it leaves us with enough in the town fund to play that quarter if in some unforeseen or unwanted circumstances we had to pay that back. Right? Does that make sense? Okay, thank you.
Michael Madigan.
So, is this in an effort to help free up general funds for the overhire in the
Yes.
police department?
Yes.
Okay.
That will be my companion motion on the other side.
All right, I'm just trying to see the end game here. So I assumed that was the case, and I just wanted to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah, that was my understanding when I seconded it.
Anyone else? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that motion carries. Okay, I think we are finished with, oh, you want to say something? Go ahead, Michelle.
So you guys, or everybody that voted yay, just so I understand, because we've never done this before, you are directing me to change the budget from the 100,000 in just social service agencies to 175. Okay. And just so it's on the record, I don't agree with it, but it's your decision ultimately. So that is what I will change, and that will be what is presented to you guys at the July meeting.
And you're going to keep the 50,000 for your program, right?
Since I said I was going to originally do it,
But it
I'm
might
gonna
not
do
take
it, but
50,000, but if you allocate it.
it'll go.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
that's the phone calls that we get,
okay,
is the rent assistance, and not from our clients. It comes from a lot of people
okay.
in Urbana. So the rent assistance program to me is more important, I think, to the community, and that's how I feel. So, I just wanted to, say that those are my opinions, but that's how I'll present the budget with the 175 in social service agencies and the 50,000 in the homelessness prevention program.
Okay. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Oh, Aaron Ammons.
So Diane, and this may be stretching this a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that I was clear from last week. The youth program, the summer youth program, we are not giving money to that this year. Is that correct? The summer youth employment program?
The council voted, or in their allocations, I believe it was about $3,900. Yes.
So that was $3,900.
As part of that total 245,000 that was available.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay, there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.